Hey everybody, welcome to another quick drive chat. Today was interesting. Something that I've dealt a lot with today was, again, I was working with pivot tables in React Table, kind of working on polishing those a little bit more, and I got really deep into aggregations. If you've ever aggregated data with like a programming language, it's very different than what you'd expect if you've used something like Excel. Usually you got a bunch of data in Excel and you just kind of hit the little drop downs and say, hey, I want to group by this, and then you can aggregate by sum and average. A lot of that stuff you have to do manually on your own when you're building like a data grid. And React Table ships with some aggregation utilities built into it. So you can just say, hey, I want this column to sum, or I want it to count the unique items in it, or average, or whatever. And you can write your own aggregations and add them to your tables. The interesting thing is that when you start aggregating aggregations, that's a weird concept to think about at first, but say you take 1,000 rows and you group them all down to like 10 rows, right? So you're gonna have 100, maybe around 100 rows in each group. And then if you group those 10 row or those 100 rows again down into, just a few rows, how do you aggregate those aggregations that were made on the first one? There's two schools of thought where it's like, oh, well, you should aggregate, you should always aggregate the leaf node values to get the most accurate versions, right? But then there's also this concept where maybe you don't want to or you don't want to aggregate the leaf nodes all the time. You want to do something like a double aggregate where, what's a good way to describe this? So let's say in the low level values, at the leaf node values, you have like an array of favorite fruit, right? So every person on this table has 3 or 4 favorite fruits, or a variable number of favorite fruits. And let's say the first aggregation is to count those fruits, right? To say, okay, I'm going to count the unique number of fruits in the first aggregation, and then on any layer after that you want to average that unique count. So you could have the first aggregation be unique, and then you could have a third one be average or something like that. And you can kind of mix and match it with a couple of those different concepts where you can aggregate one way the first time, and then any time you want to aggregate an aggregation, you can treat it differently. It's kind of mind-bending, and honestly, it was making my head hurt today, but I think I figured most of it out. It gets a little more difficult with like pivot tables. Once you start getting into like pivoting columns up, it makes more sense to have some type of a UI built around your table so that you can allow your users to select how they want to aggregate certain columns. Right now, up front, you can select you can have an aggregation be on a column. But I think in the future, I'm going to have something kind of like a use aggregation state or something like that, where you'll actually be able to toggle and change the aggregation type for a column on the fly and not have it, go through and have to re-render everything because you changed your column definitions. Anyways, pivot tables are coming along. It's really cool. I have this data set that I am generating that just has like a bunch of employees who are selling pencils and desks and office supplies, to varying degrees of success. And I think that's a really typical use case for people who have like pivot tables, is where they say, hey, here are all my sales, here's where they all came from, and attribution. I want to group my sales by product category, and then I want to pivot up the last 3 months. So I want to pivot up the employees who sold those things, so you can see, you can start to cross-section your data how you want to see it. So yeah, I'm really excited about pivot tables. I don't want to release them too fast because I want to get them just right. Pivot tables is something where you could really go nuts, both go crazy in your own head and go crazy with what you can do. So I don't want to ship anything that's going to be too flexible out of the gate, but I do want to leave myself a lot of room for adding features down the road and make sure that there's like plenty of inversion of control to the user. So if you have time, I would say it's worth it to go back into Excel. If you haven't been in Excel in a while, open Excel or Numbers and find some sample data and just try and build a pivot table and mess around with it. Like, they have pivot table functionality built into it, so you can mess around with pivot tables pretty easy in Excel and Numbers. But then once you have that pivot table, start thinking about like, how do you get that data? What is all the operations and like the programming that would need to go in to that logical flow? And it's quite a bit, and I know because I've been building it. But it's been a lot of fun. So again, we're super excited about it. Be sure to check out React Table. It's a very like passionate side project for me. I have a lot of fun working on it, and I think it's helping a lot of people. So go check it out. You can get there through like my GitHub, or you could click on my GitHub from Twitter, or you could even go to react-table.js.org. I think I have that aliased to the GitHub repo. But anyways, this has been a fun little wind down chat for today. I'm about to pull up to my house and see my family for Christmas break, and I'm super excited about that because I'm really tired and I feel like I've been having some long days. So have a good Christmas break, and I hope you get time to spend with your family and make the best of it. See ya.